This video has been a long time coming. I don't know if you've been watching some of my other videos about some of my travels throughout the year, but something's been missing through it all. I've been visiting all these national parks and I have not been able to show you any of the video or photos of what I've been producing because, well, the rules and regulations of the national parks and filming. But something happened. It took an act of Congress to get this video to you, but it has happened. Joe Biden has just signed the Explore Act into law, which changes how you're able to film in a lot of these national parks and other national areas. And it does a lot of other things too, but it all has to deal with outdoor recreation more so than actual outdoor work. So it really doesn't affect a whole lot on the channel, but I've been wanting to bring this stuff to you so that you can see it. And now I have the opportunity. So I figured what better way to do it than to bring you around the old Christmas tree where we have a ton of ornaments that we've been collecting throughout the year and just talk about and show you all of these videos and everything else that I've wanted to talk about throughout the year. And well, we'll just go to Mike over by the Christmas tree. Grand Canyon. And this was our first big trip of the year. This was our shakedown trip for our RV. It happened in March. If you're not familiar with a shakedown trip, it's basically the first trip you take with your RV. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure everything out, make sure you have everything you need, all of those kinds of things. And you're supposed to do it close, maybe like an hour away, maybe 2 max if you really need to. But it's supposed to be a close trip. Ours, we decided to go across the country. Yeah, was not the brightest idea. I was pretty well prepared, and but we ran into something I was not expecting, which was snow. I was expecting, we're moving south, we're going towards the desert, we're not going to run into a lot of snow. It's March here, and we were having, some snow, but it was like flurries and nothing stuck. It was pretty warm. Put it on our SUV. Yeah, I had the SUV. That was another mistake that I found out I made. But at the time, I was having valve spring issues with my truck. If you want to you can go check out that video of when I actually ended up fixing the valve springs. But I think there was a number of videos that I actually did on that particular subject. So what happened was the valve spring got fixed, but it was a performance part as it was labeled online. I think it was actually for the larger Hemi. It ended up going into the truck. It worked. It got me through the snowstorm. It was still in the truck when we went on this trip in March. So even though the truck was running, I was not confident with this not proper valve spring, and all of the other valve springs were old, to take it halfway across the country. Fortunately, I thought about this when we bought our RV, and we got an SUV towable RV. So this was something that we should be able to tow with our Traverse that could do up to 5,000 pounds because it's only 3,800 pounds. Well, and it should be fine, right? Going through the mountains and everything else. But I found out otherwise. So it started, I guess, after we left St. Louis. We drove down to St. Louis, beautiful day, picked up the RV, still a beautiful day. We got into Kansas, spent the night in Kansas, and then went to church, and then hitched up the RV. This was a Saturday that we left. It was Sunday that we went to church in the morning, hitched up the RV, hit the highway. And it was wind advisory, wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. We're on the highway, and this thing's just swaying back and forth. I don't have a very heavy pull vehicle on it, so it's swaying even more, and I don't know I haven't figured out exactly how I needed to put the sway for the wind. We're dealing with very high winds. Well, I actually ended up, ticking off a semi-truck driver behind me going like 55 miles per hour in a 70. I told you we were on the highway. And he decided he's just gonna whip around me down a hill and just floor it. He continues to floor it. He flies by me, he flies by the next car. He's going well over 70 miles per hour downhill in this wind, gets to the bottom of the hill, and his trailer just starts going like this. I thought that thing was gonna flip over. I really did. He was far enough ahead. I started already braking, and he was way ahead of me pretty much at that time because I was expecting that truck to flip over. And somehow he pulled through out of it. After seeing that, we decided we were just gonna get off the highway and take some local routes, even if it pushed us back maybe like a day or whatever. I messed up my scheduling. So I thought the Grand Canyon was closer to Las Vegas than what it was. And I found out it's like 4 hours away, and you want to go to the Grand Canyon before you go to Las Vegas, with the direction we were traveling. So I ended up canceling a day on, we were staying at our big part of it, which was staying over at Lake Mead. So we progressed on dealing with the high winds. We're moving forward. We're in Colorado. I'm in Summersville, Colorado. Over to Love's, they have an actual campground. We're the only ones here. And you notice it's snowing. So they said there was a winter storm advisory, and we were going to take heed on this. And what ended up happening was, well, today's been a rough day. High winds up to 65 miles an hour. We decided to get off the highway, take some local routes, and just so that we can control the speed a little bit better, because semi trucks were like swerving and stuff on the highway. We didn't want to become an accident. So we got off the highway, took some local routes. Then there was a rainstorm that came through. We noted that, went to a rest stop that was off of one of the local routes, and stopped there, checked the radar, said, hey, if we sit here for a couple of hours, this thing will pass through and it will barely hit us. So we just sat there for a couple of hours, started getting things a little organized in the camper. Totally shot our plans for travel. And then there was a winter storm advisory, which we knew about too, and we decided we were going to take heed on that and just stop a little earlier than planned. And then my wife goes, well, if we go this a little further, you know, blah 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 blah, you know, basically, yeah, it didn't work out the way we hoped. Got down a road. Apparently in Colorado, you guys don't plow your roads all the time. So roads don't get plowed. This road doesn't get plowed except between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. And we got about halfway here and got stuck. The little traverse wouldn't go anymore. When we started, it wasn't really accumulating. It started snowing. It was whiteout conditions, but it wasn't accumulating on the pavement. So we thought we'd be okay. Got about halfway through and got stuck. So after a $400 tow bill, service truck, 4-wheel drive came by, pulled the camper to the spot. We were able to drive the traverse through the snow, and this is where we are. Get here, there was no electricity. We did finally get the electricity on, but it's just been one nightmare after another. So I'm looking forward to getting some sleep, and hopefully some of the snow melts off, because it doesn't look like they're gonna plow this. But anyways, this is the adventure, the maiden voyage. I learned a lot. First off, I learned I was only 200 yards from the top of the mountain. Everything else was downhill from there. I have to try to figure out how I'm going to get this RV out of 6 inches of snow in the campground. I was prepared and ready to do it on my own. I was sitting there kicking the snow with my feet, clearing it. I'm like, I think I could do this. And my wife's like, no. She called the tow truck again, and he towed us out to the parking lot, where we unhitched, hitched back up to the SUV, went on our way again through Colorado. Then we got to a beautiful, beautiful national forest, the Rio Grande National Forest. Well, here we are, day 2. Supposed to be enjoying the Grand Canyon, and instead here another snowstorm came in. Driving through there, snow was really picking up. We pulled over to overlook, sat there for a few hours, waited for the snowplows to come back, booked it back into town, and found this campground. Fortunately, it was about 9 p.m. when we got in. They were able to help us, and we were able to get an electrical connection, because the heater, it runs out of electricity. So yeah, still not where we want to be. Hopefully we make it to the Grand Canyon today. My wastewater tanks are frozen, so I can't dump, which I wanted to do before we headed out. Water's not working, so I can't fill that up. Again, not too big of a deal. When we get to our next location, we should have full service there as well. And This is a cute little campground. They got cabins here and everything else. Very friendly. Twin Rivers is the name. I learned my tanks were frozen. That's a whole nother project I didn't do a video on, but I did put heaters on it, and that's because of that particular thing. If I look at my gas gauge as we're leaving, I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna have enough to make it over the mountain. We're gonna use quite a bit of gas to get up there. This little engine that could, this little 6-cylinder, is gonna have a tough time doing it. The closest gas station was still backpedaling quite a ways. So we had to go back even further to get gas, and then came back around the other way, went through the Rio Grande National Forest, where they were predicting snow yet again. So we went through the mountain. We got to the point where we were at, where we let the dogs out. We continued on. We went up. Everything looked beautiful, clear. We started getting to the top of the mountain, over 10,000 feet in the air. Snow starts falling. Didn't think anything of it. I'm like, we're at really high altitudes. We're kind of be coming down from here. We should be fine. The roads are pretty clear. You know, we did see a plow truck out, so we're like, yeah, everything should be fine. It was not that fine. As we got to the base of the mountain, we were probably pushing through at least a foot of snow. And I'm sitting there trying to decide, do I stop? Do I go? What do I do? And I decided, as long as I'm able to move, I'm gonna keep moving. And I'm just gonna keep moving until I can't move again anymore, because that's basically my best choice. We moved, we got through, we got to New Mexico, it was still snowing, and then got to the first town at the end of the national forest. And right when you hit the town, literally, it was like, bam, it was like heavy snow, then nothing. It was really weird, but it was just bam, bam. And there's even a spot in the snow where you saw somebody come in the other direction. They got a little bit of ways and like, nope, and they pulled a U-turn, and you can see the tracks in the snow, and went back the other direction. But we finally got there after that nerve-wracking. There was a rest stop, I guess you could say, not really rest, but it was a welcome center in that town. And so we stopped at the welcome center, used the restroom, just kind of sat, and I went to my wife, I just need to sit and relax, all right? Just been through a really stressful time with the vehicle. I just need to sit and relax. We're in New Mexico. Things will get warmer. Everything will be fine from here on in. So we got down into New Mexico. We drove through New Mexico. We took it all the way out to our campsite just outside of the Grand Canyon. And that one we didn't have reservations for. You don't make reservations. It's first come, first serve. But I remember talking and calling the person. They were like, you know what, we're sitting there saying this, but this time of year, you'll be fine. It doesn't fill up really fast because we were in the off season. When we got there, we were probably the last people to show up for the day. So we went and we spent the night. We were able to, everything was warmed up. I was able to dump the tanks, and it was beautiful. We had full hookups. There were no shower facilities or anything at that campground. It was basically a parking lot with hookups. As my wife calls it, a gravel parking lot with hookups. We had full hookups. So we took showers in the RV. This was probably, it just felt great. Went to the Grand Canyon early in the morning, met with her sister over at the Grand Canyon, took some pictures out in the front of the Grand Canyon with the kids and everything. And what we did is when we got to the Grand Canyon, I actually dropped my trailer off at the Grand Canyon in the RV section. I unhitched it, and then we drove to the visitor center with just the vehicle. We had to leave the pups in the RV. Now, before you get crazy, RVs are not the same as cars. You don't have the same kind of effect, especially in March. Okay, so we thought that through. We enjoyed the Grand Canyon. We got to see all the sights, and then we decided to go. We missed the magic show that we had booked in Las Vegas because it was taking too long to get where we needed to go. And we went out to Lake Mead. Finally, we got out there. That was supposed to be the big part of the trip. And we had supposed to have already been out there, but because of my mistakes and things like that, we didn't get to see that. We did get to see a magic show while we were there, but we didn't see the one that we had planned on. It was later in the evening. Got to experience the Vegas Strip, walk down the Vegas Strip, and just kind of enjoy Las Vegas for an evening. It was absolutely an amazing time. My favorite campground of all time, out of all the campgrounds that we visited, has to be Lake Mead. It was beautiful. We were right off the lake, and we had a beautiful, beautiful sight. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely enjoyed it. Had a great time in Vegas, but we only had one night and we were supposed to have 3. We headed on our way back, and on our way back, we decided to take a different route. So we decided, I think it was I-40 back instead of, I don't remember the exact highways, but instead of going through Kansas, we went through the southern route. We went through Arizona, New Mexico. So we went through that southern, and that's like the Route 66 highway. So we got to kind of see some of the Route 66 sites along the way and visit some really kind of that old historical Route 66 stuff, even though we were on the highway. And we had to be on the highway. We only had like 7 or 8 days to make this whole trip happen, going pretty much across the country. So we had to make it home. And this route was actually going to take, I think, almost 2 hours additional onto our time. But we figured it would actually probably take days off of getting back. We went to the Painted Desert and the Petrified Forest National Park. To me, this was my favorite national park. Even after seeing the Grand Canyon and all the other ones that we visited, this was probably, actually, I'm going to say this is number 1. Number 2 probably could have been number 1 had we spent more time there. But I absolutely love this park. What I loved about it was very pet friendly. You're allowed pets on the trails as long as they're leashed. And so we didn't have to keep our dogs locked up in the car or anything like that. They actually had a dog park at one of the visitor centers over on the Painted Desert side. And it was just amazing to see, because as you're going through the park, the scenery is 20 miles. It's a 20-mile drive. And as you're going through, everything just changes. It's like the whole landscape just changes as you drive through. It's absolutely amazingly beautiful and breathtaking. It's, you've seen blue mountains, yellow mountains, everything else. It reminded me a lot of the Badlands, only better. Like I said, out of all the national parks we visited this year, I think there was something like 18 different national park sites that we visited this year. Not actual national parks of the big 63 as they're known. The Yellowstones, the Yosemites, that kind of thing. But just actual areas that are run and managed by the National Park Service. And this had to be my favorite. I probably should mention, out of all this traveling we did, we visited 20 different U.S. states this year. Been in 20 different U.S. states this year, and it was a pretty crazy ride. So I finally got that valve spring fixed. And one of the things, if you watched one of my older videos, you may have said, this past year, I kind of decided I wasn't going to try to grow at all, which kind of failed. Although I will tell you, my revenues were way, way down, but it wasn't because of the lack of growth. It was because of a drought, both winter and summer. And when you're paying per mow, paying per push for snow, it stinks because you're not making money then. And this had to be one of the worst droughts that we had ever had. And we hadn't had rain for like a month. And we decided, okay, well, we're going to take this really long, like almost 2-week trip. We're going to go all the way out to Yellowstone and back home with the RV. We're going to come up, we're going to go through the Black Hills and South Dakota and all of that. And what happens on that trip as we head out? It starts pouring rain. And where's that rainstorm heading? Well, it's heading towards home. Even though we were in Minnesota at the time that was happening, that storm was actually heading straight for us. Fortunately, the grass was just really dormant. So it's like, even with that rain, it's gonna take a while for it to wake up and start growing. So we should be fine. And I just emailed my customers and said, hey, this is what's going on. And my customers are awesome. They're like, you have a life, you deserve a vacation too. Go ahead and have fun, kind of a thing. I have awesome customers. We went and we were driving through, hit torrential rain in Minnesota, stopped at our expected state park stop, decided to go backwards through the campground because the road was flooded. Here's the road out. So the road comes right in front of the bathhouse here. We did Badlands, we did Walled Rugs, we did the Corn Palace, we did all of the big touristy stuff in South Dakota, I tell you. Yeah, and that was the thing, is going through the Badlands, it reminded me a lot of the Petrified Forest, but the scenery didn't change quite as much. The Petrified Forest definitely was above Badlands. Badlands was awesome. Problem is with Badlands is it's a lot more popular than the Petrified Forest. So there's a lot more people. That was one of the key factors. of Petrified Forest was the amount of people that were there. I mean, there were a lot of people there, but it was what I would expect as being a lot of people in an outdoor setting like that in a national park. Every other place just seemed to be packed to the gills, like beyond capacity at the rest of these national parks. But we finally got into where we were headed, which was Custer in the Black Hills. That's when all of our fun really kind of began on this trip. We got to go to the bear country, which is basically a big zoo of bears, grizzly and black bears, brown and black bears. Visit Mount Rushmore. We got to go through Wind Cave, Jewel Cave. It was just really a lot of fun, awesome trip. Well, we decided to go out to Devil's Tower, only because we were continuing on to Yellowstone. It just seemed proper to get into Wyoming to go to Devil's Tower. On our trip to Devil's Tower, the old truck caught up with me. I did a whole video about taking this truck to Yellowstone. And if you want to check out that video, you can. It's right here. We had a sensor go bad, which I didn't realize the sensor went bad. I thought it was bad gas at first because I filled up. Right after I filled up, that's when I started having the problems. And then when I filled up again, the problems had stopped. And then the problems had gone away for quite some time, and then they had started again. I'll get to when they started again because it was quite a ways. So we went to Devil's Tower, and then from Devil's Tower, we went up through Montana. And it was before Devil's Tower, when we just crossed the border into Wyoming, that I filled up with gas. And that's when I started having my problems. After we got to Wyoming, there was a gas station just over the border in Montana. I went in there, stopped in there, filled up. Even though I had a half a tank of gas, I wasn't sure how much I was going to need or use. So I decided, let's just fill up and be on the safe side. I started up and the problem was gone. And the problem was gone for quite some time, actually. So I went through Montana. If you are asking me, out of all the 20 states that we've visited, which one do I think is the prettiest? Well, it's really kind of, I can't really decide. Definitely the top two, Montana and New Mexico. I absolutely loved New Mexico. It was gorgeous. I absolutely loved Montana. That was gorgeous. But we drove through Montana and we ended up stopping in Billings at the KOA in Billings, Montana. If you don't know, that's actually a pretty famous KOA because it's the first one that ever existed. It was a beautiful KOA, and my wife was all excited, not because it had paved, roads, and they had a mini golf course and a swimming pool, and it was just a beautiful place. But we were only there for a short period of time, and it wasn't even planned on our trip. We were actually expecting to already be in a lot closer than that, and I don't think we actually had a plan for that evening. So it kind of worked out. So we got in there and she absolutely was excited, but she didn't get a chance to play mini golf because she had to work in the morning. Me and my son, we played mini golf and we enjoyed the campground. And it's a beautiful campground. I think it's the first KOA. KOAs are known to be kind of nice. This one was kind of nicer than a lot of the other ones I've been to. She really liked the bathrooms for some reason. I don't understand her obsession with the bathrooms, but she loved the bathrooms. Down to the Montana to the northern gates of Yellowstone. And we had our campground over there. It was a campground that was off the Yellowstone River. Well, the idiot that booked the campground screwed up. I only booked one night. We were planning to stay 2 nights. When we had gotten there, they were looking to do some finagling to try to get us into a site that we can be there for 2 nights. They're like, I can get you 2 nights, but it's going to be 2 different sites. And of course, we sat there when they were like, as soon as the other people clear out, you can go ahead and move into the other one. That's fine with us. And of course, the people that we had to move into their site, they moved out like 5 minutes after checkout at 11 o'clock. And we wanted to be in the park early in the morning, and there was really no hope to do that. One of the big things is they wanted us out of this spot at 11 o'clock, and I don't understand why. They were like, we were able to move into the new one at 11 o'clock. We had to be out of ours at 11 o'clock. Like, well, in case other people show up earlier, blah, blah, blah. All right, even though then you tell them, well, yeah, check-in time's at 2, you're gonna have to wait or something like that. I mean, because the idea was we can get in the morning and then come back for lunch and then move the RV and then get back. It didn't work out that way. We ended up waiting for the other people to leave at 11, got in the afternoon during the rush of Yellowstone. Somehow we managed to hit all the major sites that we really wanted to see. One of the things to note is When we were there exactly 1 week before the Yellowstone shooting. And then not long after that was when they were having some of the explosions happening because it's basically a big volcano. They were having explosions happening. One of the cool things was while we were there, they were discussing though, is how much volcanic activity there was. They let us know that there was a rise in volcanic activity. So when I heard that one of the pots or whatever, one of the geysers actually kind of exploded, it did not surprise me too much because I knew that they were experiencing really high levels of volcanic activity at that time. One of the things they were saying is that Old Faithful was as high as anybody has ever seen it. It's like it broke records the day that we actually went out to see it. So that was actually very kind of cool as far as the height of Old Faithful. So that was kind of cool, and we got to experience Yellowstone. And one of the things is there was one that we did not go to, but when we were coming from our campground the second day, we were heading towards the Grand Tetons. The easiest way to do that is to drive through Yellowstone. I did not think about a few things about Yellowstone. One, there was one thing we missed that we decided to visit on the way there, which kind of pushed us back on time. The other thing I didn't think about were people stopping in the middle of the road to look at the bison along the side of the road. Look, if you want to see the bison, pull off to the side, let the traffic through, okay? Don't block traffic to go stare at the bison. And this is something I did not factor in. I was planning on spending the day over at the Grand Tetons, and we were going to go kayaking over at Jenny Lake. I had a whole big hike that you can only get to if you basically kayak out to the trail. It was gonna be a blast. It was gonna be awesome. And we got there so late that I couldn't get the permits for the kayaks. We did go to the visitor centers, you know, the main one, and then we went to the one over by Jenny Lake, and you know, we ended up picking up a few souvenirs and things like that. Well, we have one of them here. The Grand Tetons. I did get to see Jenny Lake. That was on my bucket list. I wanted to see those crystal clear waters, and I was excited about it. And this is number 2 on my national park list. Had we spent more time, it probably could have become number 1. And I might want to make this trip again sometime in the future, just to visit the Grand Tetons. I don't even care about Yellowstone. I want to see the Grand Tetons again. But there is one little caveat in this trip I did want to make sure to mention. So if you're as big of a geek about outdoor stuff as I am, you probably are familiar with a documentary about the national parks that's by Ken Burns. It's a really famous documentary. If you're as big of a geek as I am, you've watched all the director's commentary and everything else in the DVD sets. I have. And one of the things that they were talking about with Yellowstone, that there's a story they talk about with the thunder that comes around the canyon of in the valley, and how it just booms and bursts. Well, it turns out that when they did that film, they couldn't capture the actual thunder, even though it rained at that time, because the microphones were spiking out. I caught that thunder underneath the truck, underneath my truck, trying to fix my exhaust. And I'm going to play that part clip of that for you. But if you want to see that whole trip, I got that whole Yellowstone trip too. I think there's a storm coming in. We got some thunder, we got some lightning. There's a big one. Alright, I gotta go grab my solvent. I got some water from all in the sky. So through all this traveling, I was doing something. I was training for something. And by the way, did I mention I ran a freaking marathon. It was the Chicago Marathon. I got the opportunity to do it in the fall. I made the whole thing, and I have a video on that whole thing too. And you can watch that whole video, but it was an extraordinary experience. It was an amazing accomplishment, and somehow I had to figure out training through all of this travel too. And because one of the other trips that I had not mentioned was our trip to Michigan. Went to the Sleeping Bear Dunes, went out to the beach. We did the driving tour of the Sleeping Bear Dunes, had a blast there. And then we actually spent the day over at Mackinac Island. And what we did is we took the dogs, we dropped them off, we went to Rover, we dropped them off at a sitter that was not far from the ferries, took the ferry in because we knew we weren't going to be out around for the whole day and they need to, do their business. And we didn't want to leave them in the RV to do their business. We went on a nice little bike ride around Mackinac Island. We had a fun time. My son just had learned how to ride a two-wheel bike. Literally, and I understand I had been fighting him for years and years and years about doing this and trying to teach him. He didn't want to listen to his mother. He didn't want to listen to me. And, years and years. And finally I went and I told him, I made him a deal. I was like, I will give you $50 if you learn how to ride a bike, if you can ride a two-wheel bike in a week from now. That darn kid. And he went to me, he goes to me, you don't think I can do it? I'm like, oh no, I think you can do it. I don't think you will do it though, is what I told him. It's like, I know you can do it. The question is, will you do it? And so what happened was the day before, the cars were off the street because there was no parking because they were tearing the streets up the next day to repave the street in front of our house. So I went out there, he was trying to figure it out on his own. I went out there and we figured it out, and he was riding a two-wheeler on his own. And I lost $50 that day. It set us up for this trip to Mackinac Island. He was bound and determined. He did the full 8.2 mile loop around the outskirts of Mackinac Island. And, it was just, we had a fun time. And, he was like, okay, this is kind of cool, being able to do these bike rides with the family. He didn't think it was going to be as much fun as it was. And on that trip, we came back home. We went over to Grand Haven. That's where we stopped. We got a chance to kind of ride our bikes around in Grand Haven, around that area as well. I did some running while I was out there, got to run down the trails, and it's really kind of nice. And I'll tell you why it was great that I had that opportunity, because it's going to help me when I move forward into my trip for next year out there. Went to the Indiana Dunes. And this was one that we were planning on doing in the summer. And we were out in the area for a family reunion for my wife's family and never got a chance to visit the dunes. And that was something I really wanted to do. And it's one of those things because it's really close to home for me. I mean, I'm in the Chicago area. This is really close to home. It's only about a 2-hour drive. And I was like, this is one of those things that's so close, we're never going to do it because it's just too convenient. If you ever have that, you want to go somewhere, but it's so convenient, you never go there. And that's why I was afraid that the Indiana Dunes was going to happen. We had a blast. We did some hiking. We did the 3 Dune Challenge, went and did some biking in the area as well. It was just, we had a very great time, great way to end the season, but our RV needs to go back to the factory for repairs. And so it's got to go to Napanee, Indiana, and I had already taken it to the dealer to start getting that set up for the warranty work and everything else. But it's got to go back there, and we haven't had it scheduled yet. It's December as I'm recording this, almost January. Tomorrow's New Year's Eve as I'm recording this. I have not yet received a phone call, but I'll have a video coming up to talk about exactly what we're having done and, all of the other little things that have come up with the RV. That'll be coming up at a future date. That's pretty much it for the season. And it brings us here. So, we're now at the end of the year. And by the way, did I mention I ran a freaking marathon?